Let me start this off. The Danbury chapter asked me to do a presentation. I decided to do this. A number of people have been in on my full presentation of doing the LinkedIn profile, which I do every semester for the MBA candidates over here at Mount St. Mary's. One thing I've noticed in the presentation is the sheer panic on their face when they look at 18 things to do. Uh, you know, MBA students are not your regular students, right? They're grown adults. They have jobs. They have a really busy life, and on top of it, here they are working on their masters. Uh, I've thought about that for a while and said, if you take this in bite-sized chunks, you don't get so panicky, because when people get panicky, they end up doing nothing. And people really need to improve their profiles out there. Now, just some history on me. I retired from real live work back in 2012. There are people who would debate whether I'm really tired or retired, but I was, or I am. One of the things I did is I had a LinkedIn profile up, but I wanted to learn more about LinkedIn at the time. I'm an applications guy. I love working with applications. And I found this book by a young lady, and you'll see her picture later in here. She's an attorney, but she wrote this book on LinkedIn. It was like the most popular book out there, but it really went in depth, so you had to have time to read it. Well, the first thing I discovered is my profile was crap. And I literally, since being retired, I had the option of focusing on it, and I took quite a few days and literally changed my entire profile. And in the process, learned a lot, not only from her book, but from my own experience updating my profile. And I'm going to share that with you. And with that, we're going to kick this off. One of the things I discovered after I did all this work is my profile is now, and has been for a long time, in the top 1%. In LinkedIn, you have over 600 million profiles, and they're then broken down into industry groups. So within my industry group, I rank in the top 1%. And within the network, I have about 1,800 plus people in my network. I'm in about the top 2%. I got some heavy hitters in that network. One of the things LinkedIn will provide you every week is how many job searches you showed up in. And by that, I mean recruiters looking for people. The interesting thing about LinkedIn is we all look at it online, but the way the recruiters do it, and my son-in-law tuned me in because he's a recruiter. The recruiters lease some pretty sophisticated search tools from LinkedIn, and they'll do a machine search, come up with a short list of candidates. So LinkedIn, with their own analytics, spots who's being hit and shares that information. My best record to date is I came up in 1 week in 538 job searches. For a guy who's retired and not looking for work, I didn't think that was too bad. Normally, my average is between 60 and 100. It'll range. It's more than average between the high and lows in any given week. So the profile does well. Now, some people will say, well, why do you have a profile out there if you're retired? Since I lecture on this, I notice people in the audience will start grabbing their phones and looking to see if my profile adds up to what I'm lecturing them about. Do I walk the talk? So I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place there. But then again, I've gotten some writing opportunities out of it. So for me, it works. By the way, within my industry group, I rank in the top 1%. Most people are somewhere in a much larger audience of 30%. So they have a lot more competition to try to make the short list. Within my network, I'm in the top 2%. The average within that network is 42% for people. Again, the fewer competitors you have, the greater your chance of going to the top. So we're going to take 3 big hitters in this process, and I'm going to discuss about your header, your summary bio, and then documenting your experiences. Now, each of these have ergs of energy required. The least being building your header. The one requires more work will be your summary bio, and the one that you can really populate a lot of data with is your professional experiences. Okay, there are three things in your header: your photo, your background photo, and your headline. And I'll take them one at a time, obviously. You have to have a photo. It has to be an image out there. You won't even show up you'll be so far down in any list, you'll never make it in the top of the list. You have to have a photo. Now, I can get away with a few things being retired, like I converted my photo to a drawing. By the way, it hasn't hurt me at all on the job searches. But if I were still in the real world a bit, I would probably leave a full photo up. And the photo you want to have just of yourself. You want a clean background, no background behind you. It's a soft skill thing, psychology. You want the focus to be on you, so you have to have a photo in. Now, I'll explain a little later what you have to do to get that photo in, if you don't know already. Here's what you don't want in your photos. You and your pets. You and your surrounding. You're at some lake. You want nothing in that background. You don't want you and your significant other. This isn't Facebook. Not you at a family picnic, nor do you want your comic moments. By the way, every item I just listed here, you can find those no-nos on people's profiles out there. Okay? This is a professional database. You got to be professional, but you also want a dedicated photo that's focused on you. Here's a bad example. Here's a guy who doesn't have a photo in. In fact, he doesn't even have a background photo. And unfortunately, he's actively seeking employment. The last keyword you ever want to put in your profile is actively seeking employment. Why? It's a waste. No recruiter in the world gets up at 8 o'clock in the morning, has a cup of coffee, said, let me see who's actively seeking employment, and put that in as a search term. It's not going to happen. There are other ways to handle that situation, but don't put it in your header. I'll give you a second bad example of profile. Okay, guy's having a good time fishing, he's got a sea bass, and he's got water behind him. It's a no-no. And on top of it, just as a sidebar, he put his job description in, which really doesn't belong in the header. So no matter what your position is within a company, don't put it in the header. And I'll explain in a little more detail when we get down to the headline. Brenda Bernstein is a young lady who wrote the book that, in fact, it was quite a bestseller on how to effectively use LinkedIn. And this is her photo, and you notice she has a clear background. By the way, this photo was a casual photo a friend took, and then they photoshopped out the background. So I'm a fan of more casual photos because who's ever now, bringing up your online profile, you want to have an image that says friendly. Some people are just comfortable having straight lace in a suit, perfectly all right. I just tend to favor more friendly photos. But she also has a background photo, and I'll discuss those in a minute. And just to an early note here on the headline, if you look below her name, you can pretty much sum up in a quick view what she does. And all those terms that are split or delimited with, in this case, stars, are keywords for searches that she turns up. She's, by the way, her profile shows up in the top 1% of her industry group. So she's pretty good at this. Just to let you know, you can have something other than white. Lawrence in hers, she uses a darker color background, but again, it allows the focus to be on her and not the background. And that works very well for her. Background photo. Now, again, I'm retired, right? So I took a photo, spent a lot of time in Tucson, Arizona. And at the old Tucson movie studios, I shot this photo and converted it to a drawing and put it up because it kind of relates to where I am in life. But again, it adds something to the profile, right? Somebody brings this up, they've got an image, and they got an image of a photo and they got a background. If you're actively involved in business or a certain area of the profession, you probably want a photo of that would reflect that. I'm going to show you a background photo that I think is the best out there. He's the son of a friend of mine, works for SpaceX as an engineer. He's a West Point grad, and made a real successful transition from the military. I just love this background photo. It catches your eye, and you want it to catch your eye. And I thought about this when I was putting this presentation together, right? Sometimes I think companies, they try to sell their expertise based on their management team. They should be working on having good LinkedIn profiles for their management team, maybe with company authorized images to help, if you're selling in the service industry, to sell that. But this is an example of what I think is an excellent business background. And this is your headline. And LinkedIn indexes everything that's put into it to make it searchable. Now, in my case, this is where I want to be in life, and these are the areas that I have interest. So I have delimiters between them. But all of these are keywords and totally searchable. And I want to leave no doubt in anybody's mind where I am today. And that's why they call it a headline. That's why I say, don't put in, I'm actively seeking employment. You don't want it there. And you don't want to have a job position there. We're going to talk about that later here. You want to basically tell the world what you do when they bring up the profile. This kind of sets the context. And then the detail of how you got to where you are will actually flow out of LinkedIn. Okay, LinkedIn was bought by Microsoft a few years ago. I'm not a big Microsoft fan, but I see some questions coming in, and just log your questions in, guys, and we'll handle that. But I have to admit, Microsoft has done an excellent job with LinkedIn, but they're constantly making changes. So and this is where Brenda's having a hard time keeping up with her books, because she had do step 1, do step 2. Okay, they're changing that. So I always say, if you want to figure out how you do your edit for your profile photo or your background photo, put a search statement into DuckDuckGo or Google, and like this. And I'm just looking at a question coming in here, folks. And there's always instructions out there, the most current, actually. So do those searches. Now, profile images are really important. You want to search that to make sure you're using the most current width and height requirements. The reason for that is they want LinkedIn to work on all devices. And if you put the wrong size photo in, say it works on your desktop, it may not work well when someone brings it up on their smartphone or on their tablet. So they recommend sizes that will work across all devices. And you'll see the 2021 postings and they'll explain each of the image sizes. And there are images you can post further down in LinkedIn, and they'll give you those values. But they want this all to be scalable. So, make use of the search engines to find the most current data. You have a summary bio. It's amazing how many people don't fill this out. It's sort of like, when you go to look at a Apex presentation, who's the speaker, and you look at their bio, same kind of approach, only this, you're going to sum up your career in 2,000 characters or less. So you want, and again, this kind of sets a context, but don't leave it blank. This is a great opportunity to fill it full of keywords for hits on your profile. So weave those in. I'll give you some examples here. This is mine, and the way I structured it was I introduced myself as a retired professional. I then talk about, in the next paragraph, some of my career development. I highlight some keywords in here, but there's a whole bunch. So I just gave you 3, like development manager, materials manager, project management. But if you notice, I've got it laced with other terms in here because I'm also a technology guy. And then the third paragraph, I basically said, here are 3 of my big hitters in my career that I'm pretty impressed with. And let them get, whoever reading it can get a good look at it. And then the last paragraph, I basically said, so in my retirement, I lecture, but I'm not actively looking for work. So I'm hoping that comes across in that last paragraph. And generally it does, even though I get a request for, we see you're retired, but wouldn't you like to do 6 months of a project? My answer is always politely no. But if you're running your own business, if you are looking for opportunities, that last paragraph should be what you would like people to do after reading your profile. This is Brenda's. Now, she has her own business, right? And so she writes this as a business entrepreneur. And so she took advantage of this area to promote her own business. I'll just let you stare at that for 30 seconds. Again, this will be posted in about 2 days on our YouTube channel. Now, here's Lawrence's as a professor. Professors do real work, right, Doug? So she lays this out. She's an expert on mergers and acquisitions. So she's summarizing her world and her background in this statement. Again, she's taken advantage of the fact she has 2,000 characters, not words, characters to play with. Now we get to the meat and potatoes, which is documenting your professional experiences. I know I have a couple IBMers on here, so I'll pick on IBM for this, but it's probably true across any number of large companies. I'll see people from IBM who will say on their LinkedIn profile, I had 35 years with IBM. And then I'm like, okay. I don't know of anybody at IBM who just sat around and did nothing, right? We all had busy careers in IBM, busy assignments. You want to use your professional experiences area to document that. Break down the different areas that you worked. If you stay with one company, your progression. What did you do? What significant work was done in your job? People need to know what you've done. If you don't have history in there, it sends the wrong message. Like, what are you hiding? And again, it's a lost opportunity for populating keywords. And let me make a point on keywords. Redundancy is okay. If, for example, you worked in an environment where you're promoting the fact that you're good with SAP, having multiple occurrences of SAP within your profile is perfectly all right. someone may be doing a job search looking for more than 3 occurrences of SAP statements within your document. So it's perfectly all right to have redundant keywords. Here's some of mine as an example, right? This is where I am today. I've been working on this, in the author speaker area since 1990. I highlighted a couple keywords in here, but requirements engineering, Prezi, which is a Hungarian presentation software, in the area of editing and book development, content layout design. But I've got a lot of technology in here too, because I work with a lot of technology. So I have that in. And if you look at the bottom, I have images. Every job assignment you lay out, you should add some images. Create your own. I have a lot of my own images. But in this case, I've promoted my own publishing imprint because I'm gathering a lot of my past presentations under that, and the fact I do write books under that. And I got a partial cover photo from my book on project management. I broke out the fact that, I've been involved with Apex, actually for about 40 years at the point I put this in, or took this image. And a lot of people forget, if you're on a board of directors for any professional organization, that's real work. And you should, lay out what you've been doing. Now, in the Mid-Hudson chapter, when we were still alive, if you will, we had a very small board, so we had to use a lot of software to get our work done. And we became very good at a lot of this software. And so I lay those tools out because, most jobs today, you have to use application software to get work done. And employers could be looking for certain skill sets. And if you've got it, you need to put it in here. Again, I added images to the bottom, right? The way I view this is, when a machine search comes up and you make the short list, they're going to start now online looking at your profile. LinkedIn gives you plenty of room to put images in. So you want to give a prospective employer or someone who maybe you want to do contract work looking for talent, you want to give them a reason to keep looking. You don't want to be drab. So dress it up. Put images in. Again, like since I do a lot of presentations, I was able to lift images for some of my presentations, put them at the bottom. I was a technical team leader in software development. And this, by the way, I actually got this hint from Brenda, and I probably took it a little further than she would have, where I have technical team leader. Look at that. I put a colon, and then I put keywords in, which relate to the detail below. Software development is a search term. Volare is a very specific type of requirements engineering model that I have expertise in. SAP also ran multinational teams. Members of my teams were from around the world, and that's a common thing, by the way, for a lot of IBMers. I don't know about some of the other businesses out there, but we had to learn to manage in other cultures. So that's a worthwhile skill set to promote. And then explain what I did during that time frame, locations, work. But you got to provide enough data to make this data dense, data rich. And then I added a couple more images down here, this case related to the Volare process. Again, it dresses up the profile. If you were to look at my profile online, you could go down through and you'll see the images. You want to make this thing worth looking at. You want them to delve into your profile. Because they may be searching for talent in another area. Having been a hiring manager, I can tell you this is true. And suddenly you're looking at a profile and you see these other skill sets that you may want to reconfigure a job, or in fact, there's another opportunity you could use talent in and make a proposal to the potential employee. Okay, so talked about your header. I talked about the summary bio and then documenting your professional experiences. So now erg's the energy involved here. If you think about it, the header can be handled fairly quickly, although you need to give thought to your headline. The summary bio takes more work, right? You got to sit back and think about your career, how you would discuss it in roughly 2,000 characters, and make it effective and have enough keywords that are important to where you want to be and how you want to be found. And then if you've got a long career, you need to really think hard about your career. People undervalue their talent. I notice that a lot. They'll say, well, I only did this. No, you did a lot. You have to break it down because you got to be able to communicate this in writing, okay? And because if it isn't in the database, it will never be found. Think of LinkedIn as this. You got a user interface, which is their program that you bring up. And as you enter data, it starts populating databases, which are now searchable by their tools. And the more data you put in, the greater your chance of being found. Also, it allows LinkedIn to provide you feedback, like how many times you showed up in a job search. So if you focus on these areas, there's plenty more to do, but these are like the real big ones to get things going. And at this point, I'm going to enter. I see a bunch of questions coming. It's really good, guys. Love questions. Let me unshare this thing and unmute. Okay, there we go. Okay, back to the audience. I'm going to, if we keep the background noise down, let me go to the questions and then I'll just call out the people. Okay, John Forlenzo, if I butchered your name, I apologize. Is there a character limit for the header or a recommended limit? There is a character limit. Best way to find out is just go into the header and just start putting characters in till it tells you stop. It used to be 120. It may still be 120, but you may make sure that's a really good question. Is you want to maximize right to the end what you post in that header. John, does that answer your question?
It does. That actually gave me very good direction.
Okay, good. By the way, if it doesn't, people, just if I'm not answering your question, holler. Howard Altman, where can we find some interesting background photos? Now, this is actually a really good question. Be really careful here. You don't want to use photos that are proprietary. You can be sued, even on LinkedIn. Best place to go if you want some industry photos, go to Creative Commons. Those are generally publicly available. By the way, the U.S. government actually has good photos. Since we're taxpayers, you can use anything they post. But if it's someone's proprietary stuff and you don't have permission, they will sue. It happens. So you have to, I always give attribution, by the way, too. Like, for instance, Sam gave me permission to go ahead and use his photo with SpaceX. So I didn't have to block out his face or anything. And but I give attribution to him. That's kind of important.
Did you say Creative Commons, John?
Yeah, Creative Commons.
And then what was the government site?
Well, you'll see a lot in there. Government, you can go to any government site and look for photos. In other words, if they post photos, anything the government takes an image of, it's taxpayer funded. So everyone has rights to use it.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah. I had to do some research in the world of writing. You want to avoid being sued if you're using images. So I had to do a lawyer actually put out a really great book on this. And then Creative Commons will also tell you that all government images are in the public domain. Public domain is a key word there. So Howard, did I answer your question?
You gave me some great ideas. Thank you.
Okay. By the way, if you have a lot of your own photos, you can dress them up too. So don't be afraid to do that. George, John, how often should a person update their LinkedIn profile? I've been told more recent updates result in a higher score. Is that true? Not necessarily. Well, it's a two-part question here. I submit that if you're an active professional out there, once a month you should sit down after you've built your profile. You should sit down and think about, what current projects are you on? What current work are you doing? What new things have you learned that you could roll into your profile? I would also recommend going out and look at the job postings within LinkedIn. By the way, those are real postings. Companies pay a lot of money for those postings. And even if you're not looking for a job currently, but you want to know if your profile is robust enough, look at the terms being used in those job postings. Do a little intellectual searching and see if you are up to date on some of these industry terms. Actually, the best place to put it is, did I forget to put one of my skill sets in that a job posting would ring a bell on? Regarding recent updates, what Microsoft does is, I go all the way back to when I was in the U.S. Army, back to the Continental Army, I guess. But I made mine pretty data intense, but when the profile comes up, it screens for the most current stuff from a visual point of view. But then the person looking for talent can then open up and go deeper and deeper.
Are you sharing anything, John?
Am I sharing? No, I'm not sharing any images. I'm just now talking to the audience.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Larry? Yeah. So if the data my view is if the data isn't in the database, it isn't going to be found. I mean, I go back, I was a combat medic and a surgical tech. I put that background in. Now, if I were still in the consulting world, that background helped years ago. I actually did a couple of medical companies searches because they at least felt from a consulting point of view, they didn't have to teach me about medical terms coming in. So you never know what the talent hunters are looking for. So make it real rich, but they're able to screen it down if they want to. But the most current gets you the most hits. I don't think so. I just logically look at this from a point of view of making a very data dense, fill out those databases. George, is that okay? Make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Maria, I was told character limits. That could be. Again, that's you could query that. I would go out when I say query. Go out and do a DuckDuckGo or Google search, or just go right into the application itself and just keep adding characters till it tells you to stop, and then you'll know for sure where they currently are at. And then your goal is to maximize that use. Does that help, Maria? I'm going to assume yes. Joyce, I found a place called Unsplash, and these are what you have to create. Yep. Unsplash is one of the other groups out there. I've always been using Creative Commons, but not because it's the best per se. It's just the one I've always been familiar with. But yes, and you do have, and even if they tell you don't have to, you should always credit the people, and you'll never have an issue. If you notice, and you'll see this if you look at the presentation after I post it out, every image I put a credit by. and by the way, if you're doing presentations out there, you should be, if you've got images in, whether you made them or you got them somewhere else, you should either credit yourself or someone else. So Joyce, is that okay? Okay, let's see. Eric Schonenberg. Is there any positive or negative to open for work? Actually, no. In fact, LinkedIn now has a checkbox for that saying you are open to be approached. So you don't have to really put that open for work in any of your statements. Go down. The last time I looked, because they keep prompting me, would you like to check this box to say you're open for work? So they now actually give that to you. They go down to your own profile and look, and you should find it. And having your work history end some months ago due to layoff, now, I mean, your work history is what it is, and you basically, if it stopped a few months ago, that's kind of where you stop. Now, if you're taking classes or doing some other activities, you could probably list that as your next level of activities, right? That you're engaged. It's just food for thought on that. But again, they're looking for skills, and the layoff. You don't even have to put the word in. You just point out that you're out. But I don't think it's going to kill you. It's not like with resumes per se. Eric, any thoughts?
I just shot you a follow up. Does it affect your search level listing? Where you show up if you have it's been 3 months, 4 months since or more.
Yeah, let me think about it. Yeah.
I mean, do you want to put in, well, I'm unemployed now, so you're looking like you're, quote, working to LinkedIn?
That could work.
Does it have an effect on where your listing is? Where you show up?
You need to have current employment. I'm thinking one of the requirements in there. So it's nothing wrong with perhaps, your current job is trying to find another job, right?
Yeah, you might think so.
Yeah. I mean, you could get creative here. It's not going to kill you. I mean, from a point of view of being, search. I hadn't thought about that. That's why I like these questions. It gets me thinking. Because you can be very creative in here. That's one of the things I point out when I do my full presentation. Make use, think outside of the box a bit. So if I take this question, the answer back to you, yeah, I would go with the job is finding new opportunities.
And I'm just concerned whether it affects the order that you show up in searches.
As long as you're active, the searches are basically, and I looked at some of the search tools, they're looking for certain skill keywords. So it's not a matter of employment time as it is skills.
But there's a search order it presents them in. Right.
The higher the skill set and the more complete the data is, the higher you show up on the list. Yeah, you don't get lowered on the list relative to employment. I don't even think that's a search parameter, to tell you the truth. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, though, well enough.
I think it's probably just behind the scenes, too. It's not a search parameter. It's what LinkedIn does.
Yeah. I've never had an issue. I mean, if you look at, let me just drop back and think for a second here. If I looked at my own profile, inclusive in everything I've done of jobs, one of them is being involved with Apex and ASCM because I'm on the board. I have been on the board. Now I'm not on the board of Danbury, but I now manage the webinars. today I just happen to be the speaker, but I manage a webinar. I treat that as a job, and I post that as such within my profile. So take a look at my profile and look what I've laid in. I also do visiting lectures. I have that in there. So there's a level of activity. So you have to think about what you're involved with, right, in the community, the professional community.
Food for thought.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I see your second follow-on question there. I thought I saw another one come in. Anybody else got any questions here?
John, this is George again.
Yeah.
Just to follow on to that discussion with Eric, early in my career, I was advised that when you're between jobs, you're never unemployed. And my friend advised me to establish my own consulting firm, and that gives you a business card, an address, a skill set, and for something like LinkedIn, that becomes a legitimate current employment listing.
Yeah, it does. In fact, that's one of the reasons I created my own publishing company. Even though I'm not looking for work, but that covers a lot of area there, and I'm actually learning a whole bunch of new skill sets that I have never had on my profile before. And under the George, to that, right, as from a consulting point of view, it's another avenue to start adding, okay, if I'm in consulting in a certain area, here are the skills being addressed in this discussion of what I'm doing.
Exactly. And if you actually get an assignment or two, so much the better, but just holding yourself out as a consultant in those key areas can help with those who are searching, hopefully, and finding you.
Yeah, no, it will. Yeah. Well, Eric, does that help?
Actually, George, that was brilliant. And I do, now that you mentioned it, I do see it. So it's an option. Thank you. And I do a little consulting for some of my former customers, but only when they want it. You know.
Well, then you're missing an opportunity not to lay those out. By the way, even though it's not in this discussion, there's an area within LinkedIn called projects. And if you do I don't care how small or large the effort is, work for a client, call it's a project. Describe what you did, and because in it you develop your keywords and search terms and write up the projects. See, the other 15 areas make it even richer, but if you don't get these first 3, the rest don't matter. Does that make sense, Eric?
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
There's a lot of room to grow within LinkedIn. In fact, thinking about this, and I've thought about this for a long time, I'm not sure what the value, it's interesting, and we all know this, right? They tell you when you write a resume, it should be no more than 2 pages at max, 1. Well, if you've got a long career, this gets to be a challenge. But why do we need a resume if I have a LinkedIn profile? Now, because like in LinkedIn, if you have a profile and you were to apply for a job within LinkedIn, they pull that profile in for the potential employer to look at. And my view is they could look to the areas they want. But if I were, looking for talent, you have this discussion. If you've ever been in a hiring position, someone comes in, you look at their resume, and then you try to go deeper in the discussion. You can save a lot of discussion by having a good deep profile. And they can look at this and perhaps zero in on a discussion, but they don't have, you as a hiring manager, now you don't have to do a lot of that probing to try to figure out what their real background is. You lay that out. That's another reason for all the detail. Because the hiring manager could determine whether they want to deep dive in the detail or not. If I were the hiring manager, I'd be deep diving, right? It costs a lot of money to get a new employee. Any other questions? Comments? Or like George did. George had a really good idea in here. LinkedIn is really important. If you're in the business, right, It's important to have a good profile because you're managing your career, right? No one has an interest in your career more than you. I don't care what people say. You are the most important person relative to your career. And you got to sell it. You got to manage it. And LinkedIn gives you that opportunity. But it does require work. But if you take it in bite-sized chunks, and today's presentation was a bite-sized chunk that has a bit of work in it, but you don't have right now worry about the other 15, which would totally discourage people because it's a lot of work. I was able to do it because I was retired. And I just delved right into it and had a curiosity about the app. It's your opportunity. Any other questions? I'm wide open. And someone else here may have a better idea than I do, so I'm wide open to that too. Okay, just make sure I didn't miss any. Someone asked, Renee, would I like to do that for the ASQ? Yeah, I have no problem doing that.
That would be great, John. Thanks so much.
Okay. By the way, anybody, what are your tips if you're changing career? This is a really great question. Thank you, Katie. I've given this a lot of thought. Man, I wish when I was younger, I had LinkedIn. Because, now I'm one of the people who was swapping careers before swapping careers was cool, right? I just did it all my career, working career. Tips if you're changing careers. First thing is that headline. If you look at mine or you look at anyone who has a solid headline, even Sam Fellinger's, that headline states where you are or where you want to be, your interest, right? To show up on a search. Also, structure search terms. If you already have the skills you need to move into another area, or you're learning those skills, you need to document them within LinkedIn to give you a shot at being found to interview for another area. Also, go into the job section. If you go into LinkedIn, go to the top, look at the very top, you'll see jobs. You click on that. You go into the area you're looking for. Look at the job postings. You can actually apply for the jobs. But I recommend you have a good, filled out LinkedIn profile just to help you. But you, again, read down through it and see what skills they're looking for and what skills you have that you haven't documented, or what skills you need to go out to acquire. Nice thing about professional associations, they offer training, right? Hey, we all know this from Apex, right? You're offered training to enhance your skills. You want to go in another area, find their professional society, look at their body of knowledge. You may not want to go for their certification, but you may want to find reference information to read about it. But scout down through their jobs database within LinkedIn. It's amazing what skills we miss when we're filling out the LinkedIn. I know I missed some when I first started with it. Missed a lot of them, to be honest. Does that help, Katie?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thanks,
Okay.
John.
Anyone else got comments or thoughts?
John, I have a quick question. This is Renee. So you did mention, that it's a no-no to put things like, worked 20 years at IBM or, something of that nature. Now, what about in your about section where you're listing maybe skills, etc.? How do you suggest we word something that would be, 10 plus years of experience doing XYZ? Instead of that, what do you think we should do? Because I know ageism is a thing, and it's something that, we all have to be, aware of.
Yeah, this in and of itself could be a great discussion for a couple of hours. I'm thinking about this. The reason I approach that is, like I give the example, I always, I'll see IBMers, because a lot of them have long careers. Let's say I had 35 years in. They stop there. They never break the detail down. And you and I know that no one sits around in IBM, right?
Right.
We're all on projects. We're all busy, but they didn't document. They sort of look at their career as, oh, I was there 35 years. Well, you want to break that detail down in your professional development, all the jobs you held. When you look at the about, it's not a matter of, I did this for 10 years. I leave like the 10 years out isn't much of a search term. That could be rationalized looking down through the professional employment. What you want to bury in there are the skills, right? You had a certain skill, you spent 10 years honing, but you want that skill listed. The 10 years
Right.
honing will show up down in the professional area.
Okay, so I will remove, or you suggest removing any of the, 10 years experience doing X, Y, Z, and not a job title per se, but just all the skills, right?
The skills.
Project
skills.
management. Yeah. Okay.
Skills
great.
are really important, and someone looking down your profile, if you've documented your different job positions, and let's just say project management shows up in 3 of them, right? It's a common search term.
Mhm.
That tells the story.
Right.
Besides
You do the
redundancy,
math.
which is a great thing, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
don't be afraid to have redundant terms.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right. This has been this is actually for me as a presenter, this has been great to have interaction with the audience. Because every presentation allows you to learn something new and think about perhaps something to add to a future presentation or change. So I appreciate this. Oh, and one comment too. This could actually open up a piece of discussion, Renee. We talk about ageism, and that's a valid thing. And I think that's why some people leave their picture off their profile. Okay, I'm 74 years old, believe it or not, and I'm still getting asked, and they know this when they contact me, but they're looking for a certain set of skills that I have. And so I haven't faced that issue. But I know it's there. I mean, let's be real, right? They want to hire someone who isn't going to end up in an ambulance, I guess, at a later date. But I just, they're desperate enough out there for skills these days. I don't know if desperate's the right term, but they need certain skill sets that aren't in abundance. So thinking about what you do, what you've done in your career, and pulling out those skills is like really important in documenting them. Because again, people underestimate their skills. I don't run into people who overestimate them. So that's having a lot of skills and solid skills generally can overcome the ageism part. Unless I submit that ageism will fall in if they're looking for hopefully a 10-year employee. But if they're looking for someone to, like, I get contacted constantly for 6-month assignments, what I like to do, because I was in consulting, so I'm used to that concept. But I don't know, it's just food for thought. If somebody has a different opinion on it, I'd like to hear it, because I'm wide open. Because there has to be a lot of opinions on this.
Yeah, I'm sure, the other piece of it would be the financial piece, right? So somebody who maybe has worked somewhere for 30 years has a higher, salary rate than one that, has 3 months experience, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so there's that too. Yeah, no, I mean, there's been a lot of different presentations that have mentioned ageism, recently. So that's why it's kind of fresh in my mind.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's you have to I'm just happy I got this far.
Well, you're doing good, John.
I try.
Well done and very informative as always, John. Thank you.
I hope this is a help to folks. And by the way, anybody wants to contact me or has questions later, my email is like real easy. It's one term, multiple words for one term. Once an Army Medic. Once an Army Medic @gmail.com.
Thanks a lot, John. Great as usual.
You're welcome, Joe. And Larry, welcome too, and everybody. But I will answer questions. Anybody has questions later, feel free to contact me. Or once I post this out on our YouTube channel, you can post questions in the comment area, and because I'll go back and look at it. So that's another approach that can be done too. Okay, I think we're hitting the clock anyway. So I want to thank everybody for the attention and the conversation and the feedback here and the give and take. So I'm really quite pleased here. So
On behalf of the Danbury chapter, John, I'd like to thank you as well.
Oh, thank you, Doug. I try.
Very successfully. Thank you very much.
Okay, everyone, and have a good afternoon and a good week.
Thanks, John.
And you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, John.
Yep. Thank you.